We were talking about our country's leaders and politicians, and currently we are facing the elections, which is where we are going to decide the biggest leader in our country. But in general, if this interview were to be seen years down the line, there's some election going on at any point of time in the world anywhere, what are the essential qualities that we should look out for when we are voting for our leader?
One, I think, it may be completely wrong. In Germany there was a guy who did a lot of development. The autobahns that exist today, 80% were made by him. He was a charismatic leader. When he talked, thousands of people came and went hysterical and raised their hands. And the same man sent thousands of people into the gas chamber. So, in fact, how many Jews were killed in the gas chamber? Same person. So that is not the criteria. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's not the criteria, because as you said, after many years we'll go down in history, somebody will see this. That's what you're saying. You would have asked the same thing to people who were seeing the video of Adolf Hitler talking in München or in Frankfurt or somewhere. You would have thought, oh, everything is going fine. We are the most superior of races. We are Aryan. Now you look back and everybody regrets. Germany has kept the name out of even textbooks. So this will be forgotten. But if you have a leader who is humanitarian, why do we still keep thinking of Gandhiji? Although many of Gandhi's principles are difficult to, implement nowadays.
Right.
But why do you think? Because here was a man who sometimes people wonder, did such a man walk here on this earth? Great leaders in other parts of the country have imitated him and tried to come. So what we need in leadership, one, concern for the whole of humanity and not just one part. One. Second, honesty. Most difficult thing to find today. Even if a leader is very honest, if he has qualities which are more like primitive animals, then that honesty is of no value to him. So what we need is it's a difficult combination. It's almost an impossible combination. It's a dream. I know it's a pipe dream.
Where do we find such a one?
It's a pipe dream. And if such a one tomorrow decides to stand with legs, he'll probably be shot down. Nobody wants it. So now you said we need a solution, I understand. So what we can do, there is no short-term solution. There is a long-term solution. After 25, 30 years, if people understand, this country is beautiful, everybody is living in peace, we need to start working on it now. And start is with how you educate the young. And don't let anybody change your history textbooks and so on.
Right.
It's very important. When such children grow up, they will say courageously, yes, we know what is right. They won't be influenced. Unfortunately, the present generation which we have, who are the parents, are influenced by many factors. There may be rare exceptions, but they are. So, they are the only hope, the youth. This is why, whenever I go, whenever I meet, I am very happy when I see young people. Mine is not a political role, but a political role need not be purely in political terms. Any attempt to bring about an improvement in society, you can consider it as some form of political involvement,
Right.
socio-political involvement. So I think in a way I'm trying. Other people also must be trying, those who think about the seriousness of this affair. Otherwise, it's going to end in complete bloodshed, total division, and 30, 40 years later, the people who then live will blame the guys who are in control now. Now they want.
Now, Shriyam, speaking of education, and you also mentioned not trying to change our history. I always have this, I feel very strongly about our ancient traditions. I believe they are some of the most powerful traditions that ever were, but they have been distorted, they have been ignored, they have been even made fun of. Now, I think for the new generation, it doesn't even exist. So when that happens, clearly education is affected, and that is probably creating what we see now. How do we recreate that magic again? How do we bring people back to loving, revering what we had, rather than looking everywhere else, especially the West?
The only way out is the generation that is older than the youngest generation, somewhere in between. They should first learn themselves before they can spread this knowledge to the young.
Yes.
And what will they learn? Unfortunately today, you don't know anything originally about your scriptures because you don't know what the language in which
Yes.
they were written.
I was going to ask you, how important is it to learn Sanskrit?
It is. It is very important because otherwise you let others interpret it for you, and that's where the problem is. And nobody will come to me, for instance, and say, hey, what you are saying about Hindu way of life is wrong. I said, no, I can quote. But if somebody doesn't know Sanskrit, then you don't know. You depend on what others are saying, the opinion of others, interpretation of others. All scriptures are amenable to political exploitation.
Sure.
So we don't know.
Especially because most of them don't know what the scriptures say.
See, so what is the point? So therefore make them know. Which means what? Introduce your ancient languages into the system once more. Infuse life into it. Let the children learn. Also there are many positive aspects, like yoga is so famous in the West. Why? There are other things also which can be made important in the West.
Yes.
So that should be our thrust. We should start working on how people can understand, especially when they are young, the value of the roots which they have. And when they find that, they will find that they have been totally exploited and made to misunderstand the worth of this.
There's a huge resistance, Shriyam. In fact, I have known of many people who would resist their children being made to learn Sanskrit in school, and they would rather have them learn languages like French or German or anything else but Sanskrit because
that is the other side. There are two sides. There are some who would only make the children learn Hanuman Chalisa, nothing else. And they will chant by rote without even knowing what they are chanting. One side. And when there is a kind of a war or battle, they will chant Hanuman Chalisa and pick up a mace and go like Hanuman. That is one side. I'm not saying Hanuman, there is anything wrong with Hanuman.
Yeah.
Then there is the other side which think anything to do with our culture is superstitious and not
Primitive.
fashionable, is primitive. So they are the ones who want to learn only French and Spanish and Italian and so on. Anyhow, we imitate them, right? We imitate the West in our dress, in our habits, in our food, in our everything. We only have to add a little bit of culture into it. This is what happens. The British did a wonderful thing. They did it all over the world in some way. And the effects of it we still have. They taught us English. See, today what language are we talking in?
English.
English. So it's become a link language, especially in a country like India, because there are so many languages, so it has become one. There is an advantage, one side.
Sure.
The other side is, our thinking is generally anglicized.
Right.
Not just speaking or imitating, that's okay. The least of our problems. The brain thinks like an Englishman because it's been put into our head. The psyche has become English, so it thinks that way. Just now I could have sat down on the floor and talked to you. That would have been nice. But then suddenly you are accustomed to seeing people sitting in the novels and so on benches in the park. See how it unconsciously comes? I said, let's sit on the bench.
Yeah, I asked you.
No, I'm not denying it happens. What I'm saying is inside, it is there.
Yes.
We have so many beautiful books here, Mahabharata, Ramayana, fairy tales, so many. But what are the young children learning today, reading? Harry Potter. Why? They say, oh, it is mystical. What? We have so much mystical things here. I'm not saying we shouldn't read.
Right.
That language has been built into our system and we also tend to think that way.
Yeah.
So that also needs to change. You can have English medium schools, otherwise when you go on to the global society, it will be difficult for you to, I understand.
Right.
But don't consider your own culture and your languages to be worthless.
So you would put English, you would put English and Sanskrit in the same amount of importance. If that were a part of the education, that would...
Yeah, the British left how many years ago?
More than half a century.
Yeah, but we are still under British rule because our brain is ruled by English.
Yeah, right here.
And it is so in many parts of the world. It's not only here.
Yes.
So it takes a lot of time to dig and get this out and start working on it. And the other is, politics has always used religion to its advantage. We have to begin to understand that carefully.
Yes.
I want to tell you something. There was the first president of Kenya, whose name was Jomo Kenyatta. His son is the president. Jomo Kenyatta, when the British finally left, because he was in jail, finally when the British left, and when they were raising the Kenyan flag and bringing the British flag down, he said few things. One of them is very funny. His accent was very African. So he said, when the Christian English missionaries, first people to go were the missionaries, like in Spain. And
yes.
He said, when the British missionaries came to this country, we had lots of land, and they had a Bible. And then they taught us how to pray with closed eyes. When we opened our eyes, they had the land and we had the Bible. So, religion has a great impact on thinking. Language has a great impact. Now, so what I'm trying to say is that there must be a group of really good academicians who are neither partial nor prejudiced to this or that, but who just want to understand the situation and the truth and how to change it. We need such academicians. What happens is today, catch an academic, he's linked either to here or to there. I meet many people, either they are right or they are left.
Yes.
Those who usually say we are center are actually not academicians, generally. They are like novelists or something like that.
Right.
So, novels also can have an impact.
Sure.
Believe me. So, we need to get young people and sterling educational institutions in this country which produce leaders of the future.
Yes.
Who are not partial, who come out with an open mind. And if that happens, we don't need to go to Harvard, we don't need to go to Carnegie University. We can have such universities here, but it shouldn't be kind of partial.
Now, speaking of impartial education, do you think spirituality can play a role?
Yes. When I say spirituality, for me, spirituality is ultimately to discover the divine element in all human beings. Other living beings also, but primarily in human beings, because human beings are the only ones who can be aware of themselves, conscious of themselves. Animals are also very intelligent, but they cannot sit and say, oh, I am this. They can't. They don't have that capacity. We have. Therefore, that should be the definition of spiritual. That, the great statements in the spiritual text, Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Anybody who is truly spiritual will consider that the whole world be happy. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. This is Sanskrit, of course, but it doesn't matter. Sarve bhavantu sarve santu niramaya. What? 1,000 years before. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Ma kaschit dukkha. Let there be no grief anywhere. This universal outlook is a reflection of true spirituality. It doesn't matter whether you worship this god or that god, or like the Jains. You cannot say the Jains are not Hindus because they are from this country. They don't even have a concept of God. There it is. If you said Ishwar created, they say who created him? But they believe in the immortality of the soul and the goodness of the heart, ahimsa paramodharma. And their whole process, little tough, it's very difficult for most people to be real Jains. So a little bit impractical for daily life. But the thing is, their stress is on freedom. Their stress is on spiritual illumination. Without falling into the category of saying, I believe in this or I believe in that. I'm not saying we should all become Jains. I don't want to pull my hair out. What I mean to say is that spiritual should be more human. Because much of these things which have been said by the rishis have come out of their experience, personal anubhava. Today there is no much experience, there is only book reading. People parrot.
Right.
Scriptures. Where is the experience? So that way, you're right. Apart from educating the young to become more progressive and global in their outlook, and embracing all forms of thoughts and not getting worked up by it. You don't have to get converted to it, you can look at it. There should also be this element, which is that one should finally aim for spiritual experience.
Yes.
That part is going to be difficult.
Yes, because I personally feel that it would be great if it was part of the system of education, because then you start young, but then...
We don't. So can we also introduce that into the system?
Maybe give it some word which doesn't bother
Clash
everyone.
with any religion.
Yes.
We need to cook up something.
Something needs to be cooked up.
Some word which defines a true spiritual experience.
Yes.
By which one understands that the same being is everywhere, in every heart.
Yes.
Swami Vivekananda was once asked to define Vedanta. He said, every being is potentially divine. To manifest this divinity either through work or through worship or through service, this is the aim of Vedanta. He said the rest is all fancy trimmings. That has to happen. I am one person who is very proud of my country. But when I say my country, it's not just confined to geographical location only. It means the vast world which understands this feeling of oneness.